Thank you for watching me struggle to make my hot chocolate, but I've made it. It actually tastes really good. I drank a bunch already. If you haven't and want to, this is your sign to get a cozy drink and join me. And while you do that, I guess I'll tell you what this video is about. I have been wanting to make a video for a while, and I was kind of debating like, what do I want to do? And since I don't make that many videos, I was like, well, I have a few different ideas for like what I like to watch, and I thought I would just combine them all together. Oh, also I'm filming by a window, so I apologize if you hear loud cars, but it is what it is. So I personally, towards the end of the year, really like kind of holiday reading vlogmas, bookmas type content a lot. And I also really like how people sort of do their list videos, like, you know, the best reads of 2024 or the most disappointing reads, things like that. And I also really love any of the chatty videos where people discuss just kind of goals for the next year, or like reflecting on how their reading year went this past year. All that type of shit, I eat it up. And so I was kind of debating like, what kind of video would I want to make? And I had a few ideas, and since I don't make that much content to begin with, I just thought, let me combine them all and make a little mini year-end video combo thing of all of the things that I just said. So my hopes in this video were, for the reading portion, I actually recently went to this bookstore called Type Books. I believe there's like 3 of them in Toronto. Ever since the whole like Indigo scandal stuff has happened, I've been trying to just support local, and I ventured to go to Type Books. It's near Trinity Bellwoods. And I honestly, I felt like when I went there, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna go help out the little man or whatever. The place was so busy though. They definitely didn't need my business to continue to stay in business. They were doing very well for themselves. So my gift to myself, I guess, for doing all of that was that I bought these 2 books. I initially went to go get a like holiday romance, and none of the holiday romances are really speaking to me. I've yet to really, I think, read a Christmas themed romance. Like, I watch so many Hallmark videos or Hallmark movies, and I love those. I watch all the Netflix Christmas stuff, but I don't think I've actually read like a proper holiday romance. So anyways, not that this is that, but none of them spoke to me. So I ended up getting this one, which is about kind of a Muslim romance. And I believe that the main character is Palestinian. Why did I think that? Oh yes, a romantic comedy set in Sydney, Australia, about a 27-year-old Palestinian woman who is suddenly faced with unexpected choices in life and in love. I've never been to Australia, but would love to go, and I wanted to read something. I assume the author must also be Palestinian, but who knows? I guess we'll find out. And then the other book that I picked up was this one, which is the one that I actually want to read today. I'm hoping it is quite short, and that for once in my life, I will be able to begin and finish a book in a vlog. But essentially, as I was saying, I was looking for a holiday, like Christmas romance. None of them were speaking to me. But then I found this kind of other genre that probably has always existed, but I just learned about, which is like cozy holiday murder mysteries. And if you know anything about me, I already like cozy mysteries. I'm not a huge murder mystery person in general, but there's a few that I read that are usually about people who like work in bakery shops, and it kind of combines like baking and sleuthing, and I like those a lot. And so I thought maybe this will be a little bit of that. Plus the whole thing sorta is like in email, and let me see if I can find it, kind of like text message format, like this kind of. So I thought that I'd be able to read this fairly quickly. Santa Claus has died, and I think everyone's just trying to figure out who killed Santa Claus. So yeah, I'm excited. I'll read that today, and I will give you my thoughts on that. And then, one second. So I guess for the next part, I can start with like my my musings on my last year and how my reading has gone. I'm a little not conflicted. I think I have like varying opinions in the sense that I think objectively the past year has probably been my worst reading year, although it wasn't like too bad. I think currently I have 25 books on my Goodreads. I don't usually include manga, so if you included manga or sort of graphic novels, it'd probably be a little higher. But then also 2 of these books, technically, I only read to like 85%. So if you're a purist, then you could probably take 2 of these off. But to me, if you've read that far, you've basically read the book. So I skimmed the last little bit and put them on not my word count, my book count. The reason I thought that this year was bad was like 3 or 4-fold. First of all, I actually read a lot less than in prior years. This part didn't bother me too much. I think just in general, if I have stressful things going on in life, then I usually tend to read a little less, and usually I'll sort of watch TV or do other coping mechanisms and have other outlets. So I usually read a little less if I'm stressed about stuff. And this past year, I was applying to CARMs, and I think just like mentally that took a lot. And so I was reading a little less, and I foresee in the future, since I'm going to be studying for the Royal College this year, I foresee I probably will stay a little stressed, although I've been reading despite studying, so who knows. But definitely, like, I don't want to call it slumps because I was always reading throughout the year, but just not as much as I usually do. But I would say there was a good chunk of like 3-4 months where maybe I read 1 book. And you know, the other thing was, it wasn't even just that I didn't want to read. I, this year in particular, found it very hard to find books that would keep my interest. Like, I think I started at least 10 other books that are not on this list that I maybe read like 10-12% of, and then just like I was not interested. And they were like popular books too. Like, it was, I tried a lot of different books. There was a ton that were sort of like the hyped books online. Like, I tried A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I tried Divine Rivals, and there were several others that I tried, and I was like, I don't know if it's me, I don't know if it's the books, but I just like, nothing's kind of keeping my attention. And it was a bit hard, obviously, because if it is more like, oh, I'm in a reading slump, don't want to read mood, then, you know, maybe I would give these books a second chance. Whereas maybe my tastes are changing and I don't quite know what I want to read or what I like anymore. And maybe I'm still kind of finding my new taste and like new things that I'm interested in, if you will. Both are sad in the sense that I'm not reading, but just, you know, have like different ways to fix them. I think it was a little bit of both, to be honest. Like, so many of the books that I did actually end up finishing were also like very mid reads, and that was kind of new for me. Like, I found in prior years there were tons of books that I liked. There were a lot that disappointed me as well, but usually most of them kind of fell in the middle in a good way. And then a few stood out, and then a few I was like, this was like not tolerable, you know? But this year I found like there were so many that I just kind of pushed myself through, simply because I wasn't reading at all and I didn't want to just like give up on everything. And so actually a lot of my disappointing reads this year, I think, kind of fall into that category of authors I was excited for, and their books just didn't hit the way they used to. And I'm still, like I said, not sure if it's more me changing or if it is just a bad batch this year, or, you know, what happened. But I also, for whatever reason, and I don't know if other people do this, but for me, there's like this weird dynamic between me and like hyped books where I feel like they get so popular and I obviously want to read them because, you know, we're social human creatures and I don't want to be left out. But I know deep in my heart that the majority of hyped books are like, I'm not the target demographic necessarily for them. Like, I know I probably won't like the majority of them, and yet I still want to try them all. And when I try them, if I like it, then great. If not, I'm like mad at myself because it's like, I should have known better. Like, you know, you're just making the same mistake over and over again. So I don't know why there's this weird pressure for me to attempt popular books, even though in my heart, I know I'll probably enjoy books that I just sort of pick out for myself, or at least curate. Like, there can be popular books that I know I'll like that kind of subject matter, or maybe I've liked that author previously. And there are others where I look at it and I'm like, I probably won't like this, especially in the romantasy genre, like that's completely taken off right now. I'm like, I know, like some of them, if they're really being marketed as solely readable for a single trope, like I know the chances of me enjoying that book are probably low, because that's not usually, like I've never decided if I liked a romance book based off of the trope or not. It's always been like what kind of side themes are happening and like how the author balances all the other stuff with the romance. So stuff like that, where I feel like I know myself and then I still betray myself and read these books that are hyped, believing maybe I've changed. Maybe I'll be like, you know, like what most other people seem to like. It's probably not even that deep, and I should just read what I want to read. Plus, if I had time, read the hype books. But I think because I don't have a lot of time and I have to be selective with what I read, I get kind of upset if I wasted my time on a book. Anyways, all that to say, I have a weird relationship with super hyped books because I want to read them, and then if they're not good, I get mad, but it's like, who are you even mad at, you know? Like the book is popular for a reason. It's probably decent in some aspects. And yeah, I didn't know what to do with these feelings, so I thought I would share with you guys. I guess I can just start telling you a few that were like my best surprising ones, and a few that were my worst, most disappointing ones. One book that I just recently finished that I absolutely adored was Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I don't even know like how to describe the book. I would say it's about two friends in the film industry in Los Angeles in the early 90s, and they kind of get involved with like cult magic and old Mexican horror cinema. And that's really all I can tell you. It is just so good, I would say. And this is gonna have like similar, not criticisms, but like a similar issue as Babel in terms of whether or not it'll be accessible for you. But I would say that this book is very, very, very dense with information, and it borderlines honestly being a bit of a like essay, like a university level essay, as well as a novel and like a horror story. And so because of that, I think if your only interest is like just getting lost in a book and not having to think too much, but also just like an easy read, then this probably isn't for you. But for me, I was only reading like 1 or 2 chapters a night, and to me it just felt like the coziest, warmest hug. I don't specifically know what about the characters it was, but something about like the dynamic between the two of them just felt so familiar for me, and I just loved it. It was giving those slice of life anime vibes in the sense that like I could watch Tristan and Montserrat do like anything, and I thought it would have been so entertaining just watching them kind of interact and their little bickering and banter. And yeah, I really, really liked it. I also thought the author did such a good job of like us not knowing too much about the main characters, but honestly immediately feeling like you've known them forever, and they were so real and they just felt like your friends almost. I loved it. I thought the atmosphere was great. I thought all the backstory and the history, even though some people, like I've said, it's dense, so people have said it feels info dumpy, I never felt that way. And I think part of it was like I paced myself reading the book as well. I wasn't sitting there reading a ton at once, and I just think you have to be in a mindset to take in a lot of information at once, because she does space it out, but there's still a ton, and it's like very densely packed. But I personally loved it. I think Mexican Gothic is still my favorite of all of her books, but like she's kind of established herself as one of my favorite authors now, and I can't wait to read some of the other ones that I haven't read. I really want to read The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, I believe, and The Beautiful Ones. Yeah, The Daughter of Dr. Moreau and The Beautiful Ones. And there's a bunch of others that I haven't read, but at least those two I also want to get to at some point in the next year. I don't have my copy of Babel, but literally the same thing. I would say Babel was like a luxurious, silky read. It is so good. The atmosphere is the most like dark academia vibes you could ask for. The characters, impeccable. I think the strength of R.F. Kuang is 100% her ability to recreate and demonstrate microaggressions just in a way that I haven't seen any kind of book or media do. I know for me particularly, like, it was reading that and Yellowface as well this year, which is also amazing, but Babel by far is my favorite. And I think Babel in particular, like, it was just amazing how she was able to show all the nuance and complexities of microaggressions and literally like all the acute and kind of more like later impacts that it has. And she just did it so well. Like I don't think I've ever read a piece of media that has done it that well. I'm sure maybe it exists, but in the world of like YA and adult fantasy, I don't think so. At least I haven't come across it. And I just thought it was like amazing. Like I absolutely loved it. I think both, again, Silver Nitrate and Babel, like the amount of research that the authors put into the books is so clear and it's just so well done. And it's just giving like educated girly vibes. If that's your thing, that and like dark academia and a good atmosphere, like I just feel like those are the type of books that young women in university, you know, doing their PhD would actually like sit around their like Christmas dinner table and talk about. And because of that, I loved both of them so much. I realized while I was editing that I didn't even, like, I only made one point, even though I was talking for so long. First of all, I didn't even tell you what Babel's about, but it's essentially these students who aren't technically allowed to go to university, I think because they're either women or they're not white, and they kind of get a scholarship to go to Oxford and they study translation. And basically the reason they get this scholarship is because they know one of the languages of a country that the UK, or I guess Britain, is colonizing, and therefore they can help with translation. There is a little bit of magic weaved in. I didn't even tell you guys how absolutely creative I think the magic is, but basically they can, with the power of translation, like they can create these bars, and whatever meaning is kind of lost in translation is the power that the bar will manifest. And I thought that alone was the most coolest creative magic thing ever. I personally loved the like play on just what translation means and how she kind of toys with the idea that you're always going to lose a little bit of meaning and maybe gain a bit of extra meaning whenever you translate, because there's no real direct translation for most words, and that often words have several meanings, and that part alone was super cool. The way she explores how language actually helps or can be used to keep the oppressed, or, you know, how it can be used to kind of, I guess, control a colony was also super cool. Everything it says about colonialism in general, also super cool. And so I just think this book tackles so many topics, does it so well, and on top of that is like this really beautiful academic read. I don't even think I talked about the atmosphere in terms of like old Oxford and like that whole vibe. And so that only adds to the dark academia aesthetic that I was saying. And I am rambling now, but I love Babel so much. And I wanted to actually like convey all of that and not just leave it at it shows microaggressions really well, which it does do. And that's probably my favorite part. But there's so much more I loved, and so much more that I would even want to say, but don't want to, because if you haven't read the book, I don't want to like completely ruin the whole thing for you. But I think even the messages that she gives towards the end of the book with how things are resolved, I think those in and of themselves like is its own kind of message that I don't want to get into, but is also very cool. Okay, I really hope you read this book. My next really amazing read was The Silence That Binds Us by Joanna Ho. This book I just kind of randomly read because I thought, you know, whatever, it'd be fun, and it's like contemporary, and I love any of those like contemporaries that sort of deal with something. This one deals with racism, but in general, any of those like hard-hitting contemporaries, if I'm in the mood, I usually like. But this one was crazy good. This one was so good to the point where, I mean, I have been a bit of an emotional wreck in general this year, but I don't think I've ever cried so hard because of a book. And I was like driving on the highway and bawling. And I feel like I've said this in a wrap-up video previously, but I will say it again because it was just that good. And the themes that were explored, the way it showed grief, the way it talked about racism and even intersectionality a little bit. I would say the intersectionality and racism bit was like just sort of scratched upon, but at least it was there. And the rest of it, though, I thought was like phenomenally done. I thought the whole relationship with the main character and her family, and yeah, I was really surprised at how much I loved this one. And again, I was surprised at how much it made me feel things. Especially, I read this in the early part of the year, and I would say the early part of the year was probably when I wasn't mentally as well. Like, I think most of my reading stuff happened in the latter half of the year because I felt a little better. But in my most stressed and somewhat sad times, this book made me feel things. And so because of that, I am honoring it on my list of kind of best reads this year. Ali Hazelwood's new book came out this year, Love Theoretically, and I liked it the normal amount. Like, I did like it a lot, but it wasn't necessarily surprising. I think she's pretty consistent. I would say that Love Theoretically is like my second favorite now in the 3 books that she's had. I haven't read the Checkmate one yet, and that was really it for my positive-ish reads. So where shall I start? Okay, let's start with probably one of my biggest disappointments was Happy Place by Emily Henry. For Emily Henry fans, I know that this one has been very divisive, had kind of a polarizing effect. Some parts of it is unfair on my end because I was reading this again while not in the mood to read anything, and I do give it credit for the fact that Emily Henry's writing is so good that I was still able to read and finish the book, and I enjoyed being in the world of her writing, even when I wasn't necessarily in the best headspace. I think after several months of not reading, like this was probably the first book that I actually ended up finishing. So I still think it was really well done. And I don't 100% even know why people don't like it, but I don't think it's necessarily the same reason I don't like it. I just didn't like it because the main girl is supposed to be a neurosurgery resident, and I feel like if you've ever met neurosurgery residents, or if you're like, you've been a resident yourself, or you've worked with residents, like, there was nothing about this character to me that screamed, said, or even whispered resident, let alone neurosurgery resident, because that residency is intense. And I just, for the life of me, could not get myself into the story, because every time it was brought up that this girl is actually a neurosurgery resident, it just took me right out, because I was like, is she though? Is she? Like, literally, she hasn't said anything, she hasn't done anything, she's not acting like somebody who is dying on the inside, because that's what would be happening if you were a neurosurgery resident. And so it just kind of felt like Emily Henry didn't really research that part at all, and the part of the story that I feel like I should have related to the most, maybe, or a lot, just wasn't even there. And so because of that, I think I just was not invested in the rest of it, and the romance piece alone was not enough for me to kind of like the book, especially because I think Emily Henry's books, like, the draw is that they are romance, but they're also kind of verging on literary fiction, in the sense that they're exploring all these other things as well, and it's more about kind of like people and life and, you know, adulthood and whatnot. And I just felt like, because to me it felt like she got that whole residency bit so wrong, I couldn't really relate to the rest of it. And on top of that, and this part I do think could be the fact that I wasn't in the best reading headspace, but I could not keep all the friends apart. Like, I didn't know who was who and which one had which backstory. And yeah, I just found it very confusing. Towards the end, I sort of got it, but I was like, of all the friends, and they're all like dating as well, I was like, I literally don't know who's who and which one has what personality. And yeah, so I just found that part confusing. I don't think that that's necessarily the book's fault, though. I would say, like, I could have reread the book. I could have probably paid better attention. But yeah, I wanted so much more from the book. Or not even I wanted more. I just feel like the pieces that I did like were really overshadowed by the fact that I did not for a second believe that that main character, I don't even remember her name, but I did not believe that she was a neurosurgery resident. And her decisions towards the end of the book and how easily they are made, I think only further confirms to me that Emily Henry didn't talk to anybody who's in medicine. Like, I don't want to spoil the book, but the stuff that she does at the end without even thinking about, like, it just comes so naturally to her. I just think that she would have, I don't know, I would have at least appreciated seeing that kind of internal struggle a little bit. It just felt very like somebody who is looking in from the outside and doesn't actually know like the inner thinkings of somebody in that situation. And so for me, that just did not hit, and it kind of missed the mark. And so for that reason, I didn't really like Happy Place. My next disappointing read, I would say, was Wildfire by Hannah Grace. I really liked Icebreaker, and I was excited to read this one because I also felt like Icebreaker, almost the way Emily Henry does, it kind of like delves into a lot deeper topics while still being very like new adult, but tries to also kind of add that literary fiction element to it. And I think Wildfire also does that a bit, and I actually appreciated it. I feel like in this one, the romance kind of looks into sort of like mommy and daddy issues on both ends, and that was interesting. I even thought the characters were interesting. The dialogue in this book at times was so cringy. It was really hard to read. Like, there were just times where I was like, this reads like a very unedited fan fiction, or it reads like something like your therapist told you, and you know, it felt like a breakthrough to you, and then you just kind of gave that line to some random character and they said it out of nowhere, and it was like, oh, is this supposed to be deep, or like, what are we doing here? I just felt like even when it was deep and I was like accurate, like facts, but nobody talks like that. And I don't think that a group of like 21-year-olds or however old they were would talk like that. It really took me out of it, and it happened frequently. And so for this one in particular, again, I liked the writing, I liked the characters, I even liked a little bit the exploration of kind of more heavy family issues, although I would have wanted way more. In the end, it was a no. Like, to the point where I don't know if I want to read her third book if and when it comes out. Like, Icebreaker, there are elements I didn't love, but I really enjoyed the reading experience, and I would recommend that to like any romance lover. This one, not so much. I would consider, if her next book has like raving reviews, then I will consider trying it. But I kind of have a feeling that maybe Hannah Grace was going to be a one-hit wonder for me. My next disappointing read, this one probably isn't my most disappointing. I would just say it was it was a little disappointing. It was probably Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Okay, so this is another one that obviously was like super, 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 super hyped. And so I had to read it. And I think for this one, I would not be mad at the mob for making me read it, because it was so hyped that I thought I want to at least see what all the hype is about regardless. And the weird thing is, I'm not upset at the hype for it. Like, it wasn't like, oh, it's hyped up, but actually it's a shitty book. I liked the book. I think I was just disappointed at the execution of what happens in the book, because when I started the book, it starts off like very action-packed. Oh, I guess if you don't know, it's about a girl who basically goes to like fighting military school and to learn to ride dragons. That's like the gist. It starts off like very action-packed and a lot of fun, and it kind of falls into the romantasy genre in that a huge draw for the book is that there's an enemies to lovers trope romance thing. I was disappointed by the fact that the enemies to lovers starts off so good, and then kind of I thought it just lost steam. I thought that the way the author decided to go about it, I was kind of upset with how it sort of not even ended, but like what happened halfway through and onwards. If it's supposed to be a slow burn romance, like you could have slowed it down and let it burn for several books. And I don't want to like spoil the book, but it really felt like they were in love with each other way too quickly. I think what bothered me too is when I was starting the book, I would say like the first third to a half, there were parts where like as I'm reading it, I was like, who is that? Sorry, someone's coming to my house. Where as I'm reading it, I was like, yeah, I can like see where the hype is coming from. I can 100% see how this book is surprising me even as I'm reading it, and it was drawing me in. And so it almost had me. And I think the reason I was disappointed was because if it just executed the second half better, I think I would have loved it. I would have given this 4 or 5 stars just for the entertainment of the romance aspect of the book. But it didn't quite get there for me because I think the other aspects of it, like the world building and whatnot, and the actual like fantasy element of it, there's enough there that I think it's fine and I would read it. Do I think it was stellar? No. But do I need it to be stellar in romantasy? No. Like my only issue with Fourth Wing is that I think it just doesn't quite hit the mark and it's a bit ambitious. And so if you're going to be ambitious and then not hit the mark, to me it feels a bit more like, you know, those movies that are like unnecessarily artsy, but like with no real substance or meaning behind why they've chosen to be so artsy. It kind of feels like that, you know, like if you know your lane and you're driving in your lane and you do it really well, sometimes you can be like a lower quality thing, but just do it really well. And I'll still like that more than like you attempting to do this more ambitious thing and not quite hitting the mark. That's how I feel about Fourth Wing. Especially right now, I'm reading Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I don't know what her name is, but I'm reading Powerless, and it is way less ambitious than Fourth Wing, and it's almost pretty much a copy of The Hunger Games, but it does it well, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And I like love that it knows what it is and just kind of delivers on that front. And so I kind of just wish that Fourth Wing did that, because there's so many elements of Fourth Wing that I liked, and I probably will still read Iron Flame just to see where it goes. Like I said, I don't think the disappointment is that it was hyped and that I didn't like it. It was more that the Enemies to Lovers just really had a lot of potential and it didn't quite hit the spot for me. And that's kind of all with me overlooking the criticisms of how it is basically army and war and military, that's the word I want, military propaganda. Because the author herself, I think, is a military wife, it makes a lot of sense if that were the case. I'll leave it at that. Obviously, if you have any differing opinions, I would love to hear them in the comments. Or if you want to talk to me about like your reading goals and whatnot, also, I would love to hear about them in the comments. Do I have any other disappointing reads? I would say my other disappointing reads probably aren't my most disappointing, but there were tons. Like I read As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow, and while it was interesting because the parallels between that, obviously it takes place in Syria, but the parallels between that and like everything we're seeing on the news with Palestine right now, very interesting. And I felt like I had like literally some of the stories that were coming out on the news about Palestine. I was like, this is like directly what I was reading in As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. And for that reason, I think it's an incredible book. I didn't end up loving the characters and the story as much as I wanted to, but I do think the content was so important, and I was happy to have read it, and I was happy to have, you know, supported a Syrian author, and I'm so happy for her and all of her success and whatnot. So that one was disappointing only in the sense that I wanted to absolutely love it, and I don't think that I did, unfortunately. I also read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I was hoping to absolutely love this one as well, and kind of similar, there's no particular reason, I just found it so boring. Like I tried really hard to read it. I tried to finish. I mean, I didn't finish this. This is one where I got to like 85% and then I kind of skimmed the last bit. So I did finish it, but I wasn't like reading it. But another one, like people love this so much, and I was really hoping to want to like it. Well, I was really hoping to like it because it was marketed as cozy fantasy, but it just wasn't it for me. And I don't know why. Something about the writing, I don't even know. So this was also a no for me. And that, I think, is it. I mean, I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and I wanted to like it more, but I didn't dislike it. So I don't know that I can say that that one was a full disappointment. I think those are all the reflections that I have. Like I said, feel free to reflect with me or share your reflections with me in the comments. Tell me how your reading year went, and yeah, feel free to share any cool thoughts you've had on your reading adventure. And I'll just stop talking now and start reading my Christmas book. it's the next day, and it's Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas Eve if you celebrate. And my family doesn't really, so there's not too much festive I can show you. But my brother is coming to visit, and I was hoping to make a cheese board. So if that at all turns pretty, I can film that and show you guys. So I have been reading the book I've been supposed to be reading, so that's really good. So far, this is going well. I made it to page 164. I did read a bit this morning, and I am very, very confident that I can read the last 30-40 pages. I do have thoughts on it, but I feel like my thoughts won't change from the 164 page mark to the 190 whatever page mark. So I actually want to just finish the book and then give like one summary of my thoughts on the book. So that'll be very soon. I just thought that maybe I'll go for a like quick walk before we do this. I was doing like the hot girl walk thing, or mental health walks, or whatever you want to call them, during the summer and fall, but then it got sort of cold and I gave up on it. But the other day I went for one. It was very, very short, but I was like, I still felt better. So I feel like I'm trying to push myself to still do them, even though it's cold, because I go out and I see tons of people walking their dog and like they have no choice but to do it, So yeah, I'm going to force myself to go on a walk, and then I'm going to give you my last thoughts and then kind of wrap this up. I put on my festive sweater to try to end this video. I came back to say that I finished the book and I can now give you my thoughts. So I also actually did a little bit of research because I was thinking about it, and although this says the Christmas appeal, and like the bottom kind of here says that she's well known for writing the appeal. So then I was like, oh my God, is this like a spin-off novel and not a proper just standalone? And so then I looked up the appeal, and sure enough, a lot of the characters in here were in that book as well. The whole main cast pretty much, but also there's like, I guess they're like police / detective students, like they're training, and those characters also were from the appeal. So it kind of made me wonder if maybe like I should have lowered my expectations a little bit, in the sense that I think technically you're already supposed to know a lot of the characters. But all that being said, let me just start with my thoughts on the book first. So essentially, the Christmas appeal is about a amateur theater play company, and they are putting on a show, and it is just a bunch of correspondences between all the members, the cast members, essentially trying to organize this play. And then you're kind of thrown in to all of it from the very get-go. You don't really get too much of an introduction to the characters, but throughout the emails you sort of get to know like who's what and some of the dynamics between all of them. And then the one thing that I was kind of surprised about is, I would say like the first half of this is just setting up for the play. Like there is no murder mystery, and you don't really know that there's going to be a murder mystery. It's really just set up. So I think that kind of took me by surprise, because I'm used to, at least the few crime novels and movies and stuff that I've watched, the like whodunit types, it's very much like you start off with a murder, right? Like think If We Were Villains, and then you're kind of backtracking and trying to figure out like who did it, and everybody's a suspect and whatnot. This book was a little different in that I would say it's like a little bit past the halfway mark that you even like figure out, that there was a murder, like who it was and whatnot. And I was kind of surprised by how long it took us to get there. And I also kind of just felt like the way the information was given, you didn't get to play along with the whodunit and try to figure it out yourself the same way you can with most other ones that I have seen. Like, I didn't like that aspect of it, but for the most part, I actually really liked the characters. I thought it was funny. I thought the dynamics were cool. I thought the setting was interesting. I thought that the like shenanigans of this small theater company just trying their best to put on a show despite a gazillion things going wrong, I liked that kind of atmosphere, if you will. And I think this would have been such like a cute short, like not Hallmark, a cute short holiday movie or special. I thought it was pretty well done. Otherwise, I just was surprised at how the actual whodunit part played out, only because I didn't get to participate as much as I would want to. The other piece, I was wondering, because I haven't actually read The Appeal, I don't know if having read that, either I would have already known the format of this author and her like whodunit types, or maybe I would have been able to play along sooner because I would have already known the characters. So I don't know how that would have played into it. And that book is much longer. Like this one's just under 200 pages. That book's about 400 something. So I think it's like a proper novel. And so I wonder if you get a lot more intro to the main characters, but also the main detective and his two kind of pupils. I don't know. I wonder if maybe I didn't get the full experience because I kind of jumped into it. That being said, I think the book is super cute and I thought the concept was fun and I'm like happy that I read it. Will I ever do this again or read this type of thing again? Maybe. It was okay. Like it was fun for what it was, but I don't think I'm now a huge new, you know, Christmas murder mystery type person. Although I think this is kind of unique enough that I could potentially try one more before saying if the whole genre is for me or not, you know? Anyways, with that, I guess, like I said, I'll show you my cheese board if and when I make it. But otherwise, I'll leave you here and I hope that you have a very, very happy holidays, whatever you celebrate, and that you have, I guess, a happy new year because I probably won't post before then either. Bye.